Hey guys, we've got a special episode for you today. We have kicked Seth out of the building and it's Session with David. And we have a special guest for you, Erin Monteagudo.
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay, I didn't ruin it. So Erin, you're with Veseris. Tell us about your background.
I'm the technical content and training specialist for Veseris, which means I write the online courses, and I've been doing that for the last almost 11 years. And I also will, when the reps ask me to go out and speak to customers, I help with their customers as well. I've been in Austin for about 11 years, but I'm originally from here in Florida, from Miami, and I got my bachelor's and master's in entomology at the University of Florida. So Dr. Kaler was my undergrad supervisor, and Dr. Nanya Su for my master's. So that was in Fort Lauderdale, working with termites. And then I got the opportunity to start working, and that was in 2004. I started working as a regional entomologist for Western Pest, and was there for a couple years, and then transferred up to New York and New Jersey, and started working for a small private while I was there as well. Got the opportunity to change from being a regional entomologist to actually being a supervisor, as well as an entomologist that was in charge of customers and technicians in New Jersey, New York City especially, and then some of the surrounding states. So, and then that led me to Veseris in Austin in 2013 to start writing these online courses. So background really in the field is with training. A big part of being a regional entomologist is not just problem solving, but hey, how are the new technicians doing? Let's follow up on their training. And that's where I first started to learn how to communicate with technicians in a way that they would understand. Asking them, why are we doing it this way? Or do you understand what it is you're doing? And when I got the chance to be a supervisor, then I started understanding how to also communicate with customers. And I had more of a direct effect on if something was going wrong at an account, I could, talk to the technician myself and say, okay, well, we're going to handle it this way, or let's work together. And so one of the things I really learned when I started riding around with technicians is how fast they get turned around from when they get hired to when they get put out in the field. And I felt really bad for a lot of them, because a lot of them didn't really feel like they knew what they were doing, didn't have a grasp of, why they were doing what they did, couldn't answer why pest problems weren't being solved, in their accounts. So then I started helping that in that way, and started realizing how to communicate with them in a way that was effective, that helped them. And what I understood with them was not to go over their heads with things that were too academic. They really needed to focus on what was going to help them do their job. And when I cut out all of the extra stuff and said, this is the pest, this is what the pest does, and this is what you can use against the pest, considering what the pest does, that really seemed to be the most effective way of training. And it just went on from there. And so over the years, you start to realize when I explain it this way, they don't quite get it, but when I explain it this way, they do. And so it was like years of just kind of refining how you would explain things, and what clicked with one and one clicked with another. And I think sometimes companies rely on maybe the technician they've had the longest to train, the new guys. And that's not always the best reason to choose someone to train a new guy. Sometimes they can't communicate what they have in their head well to other people. So you need to have someone that does a good job, but can also explain why they do a good job. What's the reason behind why they're doing things? And so I think it's a lot of what people were running into was they weren't necessarily getting trained by the best person, or that turnaround time was too fast. They were shown what to do, but not necessarily why you're doing it. And for each pest, it just varies. And so over the years, you do it so many times for different pests, you start to know what works, what clicks. And once I became a supervisor and I started dealing more with the customers, I started to understand how to talk to customers. They really like the Discovery Channel kind of stuff, the National Geographic kind of stuff, the stuff that's, intriguing about behaviors. When you start talking about, tarsal segments or things that are super academic, a lot of times they just glaze over, and they really want to focus more on like, this is the problem that I have. Is what you're telling me relevant and direct to the problem that I have? Also, that way of speaking with customers and explaining point blank, this is the pest you have. I know you think this might work because you saw this on the internet, but the behavior is different. And so this is why it's not. And those are the kind of conversations that I learn with both techs and customers. Be direct, straight to the point, explain this is your issue, this is how we're going to fix your issue, and this is why it's going to work and why what has been done before hasn't worked. Those kind of conversations are really effective.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have a lot of technicians and owners who try to over-explain like how many nodes an ant has to a customer. And that, to your point, that the customer doesn't care if it's a 2-noded ant or a single-noded ant. They just want the problem solved.
Right. And sometimes I'm not sure if that is what people really like about pests, because when you're an entomologist, they all assume that you're great at taxonomy. You can identify anything. And I'm actually not that great at that. It's not where my interest lies. I actually like more behavior. And the behavioral things are really what impact the technician and the customer the most, and the work. Yes, you have to ID. You have to be able to ID and know what it is you're dealing with. But beyond that, what are you going to do with it now that you know what it is?
Yep.
And so I don't know if people they seem to get fascinated by the taxonomy part of it. But it's actually the part that I hate the most.
Right.
And I try to find the easiest ways to identify things that don't include, getting out a key and being that, specific about it. So that's also how I would train technicians. Like here in Florida, we have how many ants? Like more than 10 different species. It gets kind of difficult. But when I was up in the Northeast, we had 3 ants that we dealt with the most. It was pavement ant, odorous house ant, or carpenter ant, right? And so the way that I did it with the guys was, I don't want to hear any more black ants. Like this should be going beyond just house ant, black ant. If it's really big, carpenter ant. Then you have 2 small black ones, okay? If you smushed it and it has an odor to it, odorous house ant. If it doesn't, pavement ant. So try to simplify things, which probably makes entomologists horrified that I do that. I don't know, but if there's an easy way to train someone to figure things out instead of getting all technical on them, it doesn't always have to be so academic. You have to know your audience and just get more to the point. And so when you can find those kinds of ways to help train people, it has more impact. Because when you get overly academic, sometimes you get that look. When someone kind of looks at you and just nods their head, that's not a sign that they understand what you're talking about.
Right.
You usually see that when it clicks, you can tell. You can get like or you can tell when someone understands what you're saying, as opposed to just yesing you. And so that's when I learned with technicians to not ask leading questions like, did you use this product? Because they're going to say yes, as opposed to, what product did you use? I used this one. Okay, why did you use that one? Because I thought this, and that. Over time, there's just been better ways to help technicians. And I don't know that everybody always knows their audience or can communicate effectively to the technicians that are out in the field doing the work.
Yeah. So you write a ton of courses for Veseris on, was it Veseris.com?
It's Veseris.com and Veseris.com/pro training, but everything is now on Veseris.com.
So you write a ton of courses. How long does it take you to write these technical courses? Because I know a lot of work goes in it on your end. From start to finish, how long does it normally take?
It can take 2 to 3 months at least, because it's not even just what you're talking about. It's putting it into a program, animating it, having it move properly, putting narration to it, making sure that that's subtitled and that's all correct. And so all the moving pieces, it's not even just the research part, but just putting it together in the programs can be at least 2 to 3 months. And that's if that's the only thing you have going on.
Right.
So I've been there for 11 years, and most of it was just redoing what had been done before. But, we still have work to do, but it takes a long time for sure.
In a perfect world, because training is important to us, it's important to you. In a perfect world, how long do you think it takes for a technician to get fully invested and fully trained and really become a great problem solver?
I would say 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because there's some problems you don't get to see them in your first month or 3 months or 6 months.
Right, because a lot of it's going to come from their own hands-on experience. And if they're inquisitive, a bad sign is when you get someone during training and they're just like, oh yeah, I got it,
Yeah.
it, or I'm good, I'm good. The more inquisitive they are, the more you have a better chance of having a good hire that's going to stay around.
Yep.
And if they're receiving it, if you know that things are clicking and they're getting it, then you're giving them that baseline. Because if you send them into that problem account where they're going to have the opportunity to learn, but they don't have that base knowledge, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
But usually when they get to that first account where they have a problem, they'll say, I remember what you told me that day that we were at that one particular, account. Because that's how the mind remembers, right? Not so much like, I read it in a book, but where I was when I heard that and where I was when I saw it for the first time. And so there's so many different pests to deal with. I would say within 1 to 2 years, you should be able to tell, how well it's clicking with them.
Yep.
And if the training was good and they're excited about it, they're going to be there, for the long run. And your customers are going to love them.
Yep.
You're going to know from your customers too.
Yeah.
Because when they get excited about what they know, they talk to the customer about it. I know this is what's going on because this happened at a place I was at my boss and they showed me this and I'm going to try that here, and they get enthusiastic about the job. So at first it's like what you told me was interesting, and now I connected it to something that I can actually do in my job, and it sticks with them better.
Yeah. So you're an entomologist and you get to create all this different training. So what's your favorite subject to talk about? If you had to pick one.
Pest wise, I actually like rodents.
Yeah.
Because I'm an entomologist. People think you're an entomologist. You grew up loving insects and making insects. I didn't. I got into entomology by accident. If I really were to describe what I like, it's behavior, animal behavior. And just mice. And I did mice and Norway rats mostly in New York. But that was the most fun. Like that's the most, until it was gross. Like when they're super rotten and you got to pick them up and they stink, that part's gross. But putting traps out and saying, let's see what I get when I come back. I'm really enjoy trapping. I really enjoy, I think they're moving around here. I'm going to set my traps out. And then when I come back the next day, I'm like, yes, I was right. So I enjoy probably rodents, but I'm going to say excluding roof rats because everything you do for Norway rats, but higher, right? So it's more work. I'm not saying I don't want to do the work, but it's more difficult. But I definitely did enjoy doing rodents because I just get more gratification out of it. I don't know if it's because they're animals or mammals and not insects, but I feel like there's more challenge to them, and there's more of a game out of it.
Yeah.
And the more you approach the job as a game sometimes, it's kind of fun. But I'm also going to say that I'm not a good technician because I take a lot of time. Like I'm slow but thorough, but that's not what you want in a technician. You want someone who can like keep on the route and stuff. So being a supervisor helped me because I would always say, if you don't have the time to do it, tell me, I'll go and take a look at it, know? And so that's where it suited me the most because I just would take the time. Not everybody has the time to trap as much as I would like to, so.
On a super technical side, and this is a debate I think in the industry right now, there's two schools of thoughts when it comes to bed bug treatments. One is do all the prep work, have the customer take everything out of the house, put it in bags, full prep list, and there's this new thought of minimal prep work and you get better results. So what do you think's better on the bed bug side for treatments?
I think, in general, my approach to pest control is if something works for you and it's legal, which is not really what we're talking about here, but if it works and it's legal, have at it. I'm not going to tell you to use any one product over another because you'll just notice different things work for different people. And it also depends on who the customer is because on some customers are not going to tolerate the whole prep work thing. Some customers need it. Do you always need the Cadillac plan for every customer, right? So does someone who does a bed bug job in New York, are they going to approach it the same in Kansas? Whereas in New York, they have it down, they're going to throw everything at it, right?
Yep.
But you might be able to do something a little bit different in a situation that's not as intense, right? So I think it all depends. I think there's something to be said for not moving the bed bugs around. And, are you using vacuums? Are you sucking up? If it's a massive infestation, are you using the filtered vacuums to suck up a lot of that infestation? Same goes for cockroaches even. I think that is a long way to get them, to get the bed bugs out of the environment. But in general, you do want to know where your pest is, right? Same thing with mice. I want to know. That's why I say don't pick up rodent droppings, because I want to know where that mouse or that rat's hanging out.
Yep.
Let's take care of the droppings after. So I think there's something to be said for, well, I want to know where these bed bugs are. You don't want to scatter them. But I don't think it necessarily matters if you're getting rid of a lot of them because of vacuuming. And they've shown that putting products in their harborages doesn't keep them from going back to their harborages. And those spots tell you where a lot of their harborages are, even if they aren't physically there at that moment. I mean, I think it's okay to not do the prep work if it's going to put a lot of stress on your customer.
Yep.
And so sometimes you have to factor in your customer and can you do it without it? And I think it can be done. I don't think you have to be so hardline on it, and that prep work, who's doing it? Is somebody paying for it? Is that an additional burden on your side of the business? So I think there's a lot of things that depend on who the customer is. And if you can take it easy on them, then that is going to help you in the long run with that customer, right? When you help them, like, okay, you know what? Maybe we don't have to do it this way. Maybe we can figure something else out. I don't think that stops you from doing a good bed bug job, right? Not doing the prep work.
I agree. So you're on the technical side and you create a ton of, all this training. It's got to be difficult for you because you don't get to see the results of the person taking the class right away. And so there's that time period after that. Do you prefer to do the training in person, or you like doing it online? Like, what's your preferred method
I prefer in person because I can see what registers or not, or if I'm doing a presentation, I can get questions from people. I've taken a lot of the stuff that I've done in person and put it online. And one of the main reason I like the opportunity to have done this and put what I know online is because that's just the way the world is today. And I at least can say, I know that what I'm doing the way that I explained it has had an impact in the field. And every time that I talk to someone or do a presentation, I still get reinforced with what works, what doesn't work, what's new, that kind of a thing. So the online part is kind of a necessity, but I feel like it's helped me get better training out there in the world, because a lot of the training that's out there is not great, especially when it's associated with CEUs. So the online courses are really training courses that have used all of that experience from the field that happen to earn CEUs, right? So you can use them to help train someone that's coming on board or to do a refresher. And I know that it has all of that I've learned in the field, but I still like to see the reactions from people as I'm talking to them. And they'll tell you, I can tell that you're talking from the field, that you're talking to me. You're not talking over me, like over my head. Right. And so that helps me continuously make sure that it's resonating with people.
Yep. So CEUs versus just traditional training, training where you're actually trying to invest in yourself. Do you think like the stakes that make the CEUs mandatory kind of ruin the training aspect a little bit because you have to take it and it's mandatory, or is it just required and we have to do it? Like, what, in a perfect world?
In a perfect world, you'd actually be getting good content from your CEUs. But in the real world, and I'm not going to say every CEU course or anything that offers CEU is never going to be good, but the reality is when people are looking for CEUs, they're not exactly doing it at a time and point where they're looking for learning. Right. So it's just true that a lot of the stuff that we have associated with CEUs is not the best content. And you can tell when you go to a meeting and the audience is just kind of, there, and why they're there, right? As opposed to if I'm doing a training session, or if there's a webinar and there's no CEUs associated with it, the people who come for that training are there because they want to learn. Right. So I think it's unfortunate that that's what happens with CEUs. It's going to be human nature. You're busy. I'm not working on it right now. My CEUs are due in end of the year. But I really want to learn in the winter. I want to learn January, February, March, when it's kind of maybe, not Florida necessarily, but in other parts of the country, you have more time to learn, but your CEUs were due December 31st. Right. Yep. So they don't always coincide. And so to be honest, you've seen stuff that are for CEUs that aren't that great. Right. And, it was an issue when I first started rewriting these courses of, hey, where were the old easy courses that I used to take for CEUs? And we all know why you were there, and so now these courses that I've written are can be used for actual training. So if you're small and you don't have someone technical, you can use them to help train someone you're onboarding. You can use them to help train the front of office, because it's important for the front of the office to know as well. They don't have to be entomologists. People tell me this all the time. I'm not an entomologist. And I'll say, you don't have to be. You just have to understand how they work, like how the insect works and what we tend to use. So even front of house, when they can understand, oh, she's got a German roach problem, not an American roach problem, just that alone changes what they might need and who they might assign it to, that kind of a thing. So that's the separation between learning and CEUs sometimes. Is don't necessarily think that because it's CEUs that you're going to be getting good learning from that. I wouldn't rely on that to teach the technicians how to do their jobs.
Yep. Awesome. Well, you're super passionate about training, and we are too, obviously, at the Pest Daily team. You got to hang out with us today and really get to know the team. What questions do you have for me or just in general?
I'd like to know from your point of view what the customers are telling you that they run into with training, what they would like to see different.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we see a lot is training's an afterthought. It's more of a reactive moment. And so the onboarding for new employees, like how do you even start training a technician from day one? Do you start with safety? Do you start with how to use a BNG? Like just a step-by-step guide is what they're interested in. And then how do you stack it from there? And every state's different time-wise on how long it takes to get licensed. But a lot of people want to know, how long should it take for me to get a good technician in the field? Because right now we're all busy. It's the middle of summer as we're talking right now. Turnover is high. And so sometimes, a lot of times, it's speed. Like, I'm down 2 people.
Right.
I need to take care of my customers. Let's get them in the field as fast as possible. So if we do that, how do we continue to educate them and become better technicians over time?
Do you ever talk about building a bench? Like they should have someone, at least one person, kind of ready and waiting in the wings, so that if that one thing happens, you get that, you can add a new route or something.
Yep.
He's ready to go. I know it's kind of tricky to say, well, he's not being productive, or I don't have the money for that. But I think it's important, number one, to have your training written down for everything that you can think of. How we handle cockroaches, how we handle ants, how we handle this, our equipment. Have it all written down so that everybody gets the same training and they all sign off on it, and you have it documented because it does come up in legal issues. Was he trained in this? How do we know that? Do you have anything to show for it? You say it all the time with documentation for service tickets. If it's not written, it didn't happen.
Right.
So if there's no training written down, as far as the court is concerned, it didn't happen, right?
Yep.
So you need to think more about, having your training documented. And then you start going through, you start to realize the things you may or may not have covered. And it's important to have someone kind of waiting in the wings, have someone on your bench ready for, when you can use them, because it's not going to work if you just pick someone off the street and you need them to start working in a matter of a few weeks. It's like you're doing 2 things at one time, whereas you can pace yourself better by having that person on board and going around with you. Maybe you get to the point where you feel like, I can afford to have someone now that I can train while I'm doing my job. And then they can maybe train the next person if they're a good trainer, if they can communicate it really well. I think the important thing is not to just show people what to do. If you have to show them, this is why we're doing it, because for this pest does this, and so we use this. Make sure that that's the kind of training that you're doing, and it'll stick. I think what happens is that, what if I build my bench and the guy leaves, right? I think that's the difference between what we do as opposed to why we do it. I think it's a more engaging job when they understand what they're doing, when they're able to solve people's problems. They feel like they're helping people. They feel like you're invested in them. Sometimes that helps change your culture as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the turnover comes from just, when a tech can't fix problems and he's constantly being asked, why can't you fix this problem? And he doesn't feel like he was set up to fix that problem. They're not going to be there for very long.
Yep.
So it's part of having that culture of, we invest in you and we hire a little bit early, maybe a little bit before than we need it, just in case, so that you can feel like you're ready when you get out in the field.
Yeah, totally agree. So we're at a point now where technology is moving rapidly. AI, virtual reality, augmented reality. Where do you see technical training in the future? with all the advancements in technology that we have right now.
I think online training is going to be around because of the convenience, and we saw it. We were already there. We were already in place when COVID happened, and so we saw a lot of people that we never used to see before, flock to the online training because we were right there where we were always, and when they really needed it. So I think there's a convenience to it. I don't know that, when you talk about AI, we talk about how is this going to take over our job. I don't think that pest management is ever going to be something that AI could take over. I think the way to look at AI is how does it make our jobs more efficient, maybe. For me, I do a lot of writing and technical work. The writing part, the checking my creative writing, all that kind of creative stuff, AI definitely makes more efficient. I don't know that a virtual reality world for training is going to be the same as hands-on. It's going to be fun, right? Am I going to get as much satisfaction out of trapping a virtual reality rat as I am a real one in real life? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can I do it the same? I'm never going to be a naysayer against it. I think AI is really just about making things more efficient, and it definitely could make training more efficient. But I don't think it's ever going to be something that takes over the work. And I don't think that you're ever going to replace hands-on with a technician. Because, you could see it even now when you go to training that's fun, but there's no content.
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody's like, yeah, it's fun. I had a great time. But what'd you learn? And they might not remember. Right.
Yep.
So I think that it might be fun and it might be something that's kind of catchy at first. But I think for things to really stick, the hands-on is where you learn. It's like the difference between, I don't know if you've experienced this, the difference between reading something on a digital screen as opposed to like a paper.
Yeah.
You retain it better. You retain things better when you actually write them out,
Yep.
As opposed to typing it. So there's a physicality, I think, to pest management that's always going to be necessary in the training.
Yep. I've thought about this a lot too, like where virtual reality is going to take place, and I think there's a benefit in the future at some point in time, and I don't know what it looks like, but where you could do a training class and you get to see the one-off, like, I don't know, rodent exclusion job in an industrial building that you couldn't see normally, and you can kind of wrap your head around it a little bit better. I don't know how far away we are, if that's even a possibility, but I hope that we get to that point just to make it a little bit easier. 'Cause
Yeah.
this younger generation, I think about my son who's 20, he spent 2 years of his high school career online, not in a class. And so he learns differently than how I learned or,
Right.
how you learned. So I think we'll get to a point, and I hope we get to a point where we can actually provide that type of technology to those people.
Yeah. And this is definitely a visual learning field, hands-on learning field. Communicating with people. I mean, it's just, people still want to see people, and so and that's an issue, a generational thing too, is how well do people communicate? Can you look someone in the eye? Can you have a conversation? You have to be able to do that. And I have to work with I have two 15-year-olds, make eye contact. They're talking to you, go back and forth. Don't just be like, so the communication part is big too. And the training really helps their communication once they understand what they're doing. It's really empowering when they're able to talk to the customer and put out an emergency without having to call their supervisor.
Yep.
In a way, it's kind of like with kids, right? It's a crutch, right? I'm going to call my dad. I'm going to call my mom. For a technician, I'm going to call my supervisor. They're going to handle it. But when your kid finally gets old enough to handle the problems themselves, right? They feel like I'm growing up, right?
Yep.
And so the technician's like, I handle this on my own. And they feel empowered by it. And, as a supervisor, that really is how it should be. You shouldn't be putting out everybody's fires. You should be, dealing with different things. That's an aside from good training is that they're able to have those conversations with your customers, and you don't have to be dealing with those kind of emergencies because they can communicate well.
Yeah, 100%. I think when we empower our team, we have better employee retention. So while we're trying to fill these trucks to get the routes done, if we took a step back and said, I'm going to provide better training, I'm going to give them the empowerment, I'm going to give them the confidence to actually do the job well, we're not constantly trying to refill that route. So yeah.
Right. It's that you're not just a body. You're actually a person that we're investing in.
Yeah.
And we want you to be here long term, and we want you to even move up if that's what you want. But
Yep.
it's that was a term I remember when I first started working in industry, is like, can they fog a mirror? You know, it's like, no, that's not what we're looking for.
Right, yeah.
we you know, like this, but you know, we don't want technicians to think that that's how we think about them.
Yep.
You know, but when you call them churn and burn them, it's a lot. And I don't think most people will handle that for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, Erin, we appreciate you coming out today. Thank you for all the wisdom and knowledge and spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
How can people get a hold of you?
Probably the easiest way, I have a doozy of a last name, so
Yeah.
hopefully it's in print somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. I'm Erin.Monteagudo at Veseris.com. It's a pretty doozy of a last name, but you can always email me, and all of my work is on pestweb.com/pro-training. So Erin Monteagudo at Veseris.com. Feel free to contact me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, Erin. Guys, if you need anything, feel free to reach out to her. We'll see you on the next one.